Welcome back to another day of Bible study. So glad that you are here with us for Suit Up as we look into the character that should mark really anybody who is not just a follower of Jesus Christ, but just advice for good character, good living, how to be just a decent human being. And this is really a lot of what the Bible talks about. And so we're here over the next few weeks talking about that. Didn't get a black eye from Sally or from the kids. Had a little something removed, so got a little spot there, and hopefully that won't get in the way too much. But if so, just close your eyes and listen today. All of this brought to you courtesy of Christ Table. If you'd like to know more about us, and we would love for you to be a part of what we are doing, go to www.christtable.today. Sign up for the email list there. In fact, I have an email to send out here in a couple of hours with in-person gatherings, information on all of the things that are coming up, and so would love for you to receive that as well. Good morning to everyone who's signing on, Loretta and everybody else. You can be a part of this Bible study, whether or not you're a part of Christ Table. We're glad that you're here. Visit go.christtable.today/suitup, and there you will find the reading list for every day of the Bible study. We've still got several weeks to go, and each and every one of these days are self-contained, and so we would love for you to be a part of these as we go through them. One other thing that I would love to have you be a part of tonight, we are working through this book, Holy Envy, by Barbara Brown Taylor. It is a book discussion club on Zoom. You can be a part of that by visiting the URL right there. Go.christtable.today/discuss. We are in chapters 3 and chapters 4. Come and be a part of it, even if you're not caught up on where we are. It'll be a great discussion. It's a great opportunity to meet people, to listen to various perspectives. And if you have a chance, you can download this book if you don't already have it on Kindle, on Apple. Holy Envy by, I'm covering up the name there, Barbara Brown Taylor, and we would love to have you be a part of that. Well, let's dig in. Today we find ourselves in Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8. And what we're going to see here is the Apostle Paul, who in yesterday's study was writing to the church in Corinth about spiritual gifts and the fact that everybody has spiritual gifts and everybody is important because everybody is a part of the body. Here we are going to find Paul writing to a different church, not in the city of Corinth, but in the city of Rome, and he's going to be discussing the same topic, spiritual gifts. So this is kind of a continuation of yesterday's study. If you missed that, feel free to go back and check out yesterday's study, day 6, and here in day 7, part 2 of this conversation. And I thought, as I was getting into this, one of the things that oftentimes gets asked around our table of our kids, and our kids sometimes will ask us this question too, is related around superpowers. Kids are fascinated, at least my kids are, with superheroes and people who are able to do miraculous things. And so it's a part of conversation. It's a part of what they request, gift wise for Christmas. It's something that we actually on Sunday afternoons after church services we'll sit down in front of the TV, and the boys really wanted to see all of the Marvel movies, which they hadn't seen. So we call it Marvel Sunday now, and every Sunday we sit down and we watch the next Marvel movie in order. And so just the idea of superheroes and superpowers is just a constant conversation around our house. But as I was thinking about this passage today and Paul's conversation with the church at Rome around gifts and talents, this question was the one that kind of was a spin on that idea. And it's, what superpower would you never want to have? And feel free in the comments if you want to just put down what superpower you'd never want to have, even if you're not watching this live and you're watching it by delay. But it's a fascinating question. Maybe you've never thought about it. Me, that is a pretty easy superpower answer. And I think it would be, honestly, flying. I don't like heights. I have this fear of heights. I go queasy, and I would love to be able to fly. I just think that if there were a list of superpowers that I would enjoy having, just the ability to fly would not be the one that I would probably choose. Now, why is that important? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the passage today. Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8. In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. And so, first of all, these gifts that God has given us, I think maybe another way to say this would be that God has given all of us a superpower. God has given you a superpower that exceeds the power that other people have, and it is something that is in his grace. If God were to give me the ability to fly, he might be giving it in his grace, but I might not see it as being from his grace. It may be something that I wouldn't necessarily want. And sometimes I think we find that with God. Sometimes the things that God gives us are the things that we would not necessarily prefer. We don't want that thing. It wouldn't be our choice. So whenever we come to this topic, this conversation of talents and gifts and things that God has given us, I think that from the beginning we have to realize that the thing that God may be giving us, the thing that God may be expecting us to use, may well be the thing that we just don't want to use. Sometimes we speak about spiritual gifts as this thing that everybody's happy to have, and we're so excited about the talents that God has given us, and oftentimes we don't want the thing that he's given us, which means we don't use the thing that he's given us, which means that the body is not experiencing the benefits and the blessings of our using that, and we aren't either. And that can cause us to, rather than thrive, it can cause us to spiritually begin to die. God's given you gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. Now, because this is a relatively short Bible study, I don't have the time to go into the nuances of all of these words and all of these gifts. And I'd love to do that, but you're just going to have to take my word for it a little bit. So whenever, and feel free to do your own research on this as well. You don't have to take my own word for it. Be like a Berean and go ahead and research on your own. I just don't have time to give all the background as to why I'm saying what I'm saying. So the church in Rome, you might imagine, was a politically centered church and environment. Rome being the seat of Caesar, being the seat of the Roman government, the great Rome. Politics, the Senate was an enormously important influence in the Roman culture that Paul is writing to here. And so this idea of prophesying is really important in the context of Rome, which Paul is writing to. And so it's probably why he lists prophecy first. Now, when we hear prophecy, oftentimes what we think of is something more akin to an Old Testament prophet who's predicting the future on the basis of what God is telling them will happen or will occur. We think of maybe Gandalf or a wizard who is telling us what is going to occur. And that is a true definition of the word prophecy or prophesy, but that is not quite what Paul has in mind here, or the word that Paul is using here. And we know that because of this second half of the sentence, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. And so what we're seeing here is a bit of a different idea of this word prophecy or prophesy, that essentially means inspired speaking. So what's being said here is what is being said is in tune with God in a way that people should listen to it because it is truthful. So what we see here is that this word is not so much telling the future as it is telling wisdom. So it kind of ratchets it down from being the mouthpiece of God to being a voice for God, if that makes sense. So it means that maybe everything that comes out of the person who has this gift's mouth, maybe everything that comes out of their mouth is not predicting the future, and everything that comes out of the person's mouth who has this gift may not be 100% true and correct and right, because what we have here is the qualification: speak out with as much faith as God has given you. So it's saying in those moments, or in certain moments, God is going to give you faith to speak truth into a situation where others would remain silent or would not know where truth is. But you're going to know where truth is, and you're going to have the ability, the strength, the talent, the courage to take a risk and to say what needs to be said on behalf of God or on behalf of God's people in those difficult moments. Many of us have that gift. But many of us don't want to use that gift. It's much easier to remain silent. It's much easier to not speak up or to speak out whenever there is wrong. Why? Because that puts the target on our backs, right? It puts the spotlight on us, because then we're at the center. What if we're wrong? What if God doesn't really want me to say that? What if it's much better for me to keep silent? How's that going to affect my family? How's that going to perceive me? What's going to happen to my job if I do this? Are people going to think differently of me? Some of us have the superpower, the talent, the gift of prophecy, of being able to prophesy and speak truth in situations where others remain silent. And we're not doing it. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. Many people don't want the gift of serving. They want to be served. I'm strongly resisting the urge of making a gender-specific joke here about men. And now that I think about it, I guess I might as well have just said it, right? Because, well, there it is. Not all men are this way, and it doesn't matter what what your identity is, what your gender is. You can still prefer to be served rather than serve. Some of us, though, we have a talent for serving, for giving to others, and we'd much rather be served. The word that's used here is a word that hints at this idea of being a deacon. And a deacon in a church isn't supposed to be somebody who is a part of the organizational management or leadership structure of the church. It's supposed to be somebody who serves the body of Christ. There are many people, though, who have the gift and the talent of serving. It's their superpower, but they don't want to be that tied in. They don't want to use the time. Paul says, though, that there are many who are given this spiritual gift. If you're a teacher, teach well. We've spoken about this over the last few days. This is one of those gifts that oftentimes people desire, that they want, because it's a showy, flashy gift. And here in the United States of America, the gift of teaching, the talent of teaching, is kind of a status symbol. It gets a lot of fanfare. People idolize teachers. Some people have that gift. Some people who teach don't have that gift. And maybe it's worth saying that just because you don't have a gift doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't exercise it. Just because you may not have the gift of prophecy Doesn't mean there aren't going to be moments when you're going to be expected to prophesy, to speak inspired words from God to people when they need to hear it. Just because your gift or talent may not be serving doesn't mean that you don't have to ever serve. Just because you may not have the gift of teaching doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have to, in moments, teach. We have to exercise all of these character traits, all of these talents. Some of them, though, are going to come naturally for you and you're going to excel in, and others just aren't your sweet spot. And that's okay, but still do it. If you're a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. I'm not sure that there is a gift that is more needful in the world and in the church today than this one. The church in general, Christians in general, have not been seen as being encouraging. They've been seen as being antagonistic. We've been seen as being self-righteous. We've been seen as being hateful. Love the sinner, but hate that sin. Why not just love the sinner? Why not just love? Stop there. Stop calling or thinking of people as sinners. Get the log out of our own eye, right? Encourage other people. Why is there a need to point out everybody's flaw? Isn't that God's job, not ours? I don't know. I think, though, that the world could do with a lot more encouragement from Christians. Why would most people ever want to follow a Jesus whose people, us, the church, are woesome people, are miserable human beings, aren't encouraging? I think that if we had more encouragers and if we were more encouraging to the world, to those around us, no matter where they are in their spiritual journey, I think people would be breaking down the doors to churches. They would be ripping the gates off the hinges of heaven to get to Christ, to get to God. Just for verse 8. If we express the gift of encouragement as a church. If it is giving, give generously. The gift that none of us wants, right? It is much better to receive than to give. Did I say that right? No. It's much better to give than to receive. Give generously. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of things to give generously. Give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. It's an interesting comment there. I wonder why he says that. I'd love to hear your feedback. Why does Paul said take the responsibility seriously if God has given you leadership ability? This is actually one where I think it would be perfectly appropriate to point out gender-specific comments in that, unfortunately, the church has not historically, especially recent history, elevated women as being equal partners in leadership. But you notice that Paul doesn't give qualification here. Paul doesn't say if God has given you men leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. No, Paul doesn't put qualification on that. And Paul never did. And anywhere where we think that Paul did, we have grossly misunderstood the culture of what Paul was saying and ignored the other places where Paul elevates women to positions of leadership. In fact, I will tell you, I think there are probably more. There's probably more women with a spiritual gift of leadership than there are men. That is my personal assessment over the men and the women that I have interacted with in contexts of spiritual community over the years. But it is what it is. I think women are much in my experience, women have been much better leaders in the church, and more of them have the gift and ability than men are given. There it is. Disagree with me, hate me, whatever. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. And I think I'm already way over time, so we'll just stop there, hit pause. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed this. I have as well. Until tomorrow.